Okay, so in this video we're going to be looking at two walls, one being a tapered wall on top. It's not a very common reinforced concrete wall. You could say that you could use them under like vehicle ramps and so forth, but they're probably more popular in garden walls and so forth. But either way, the chances that these type of walls will be built from brick and block work is probably better than concrete. But either way, we'll show you how we detail those. The next wall that I'd like to do is a curved wall, a wall around the radius, and I specifically want to do these with rebar sets because there are some videos available for doing them with rebar groups, but there seems to be an issue. People don't know how to do them with rebar sets, so we'll just go through how we do that with rebar sets. So with that in mind, let's isolate this wall. So what I'll do is I'll just grab the wall, right click, and then say select part, fit part in all views, and then also I've got a grid line A. I'll enable the grid line A view so I can see it from elevation. So that will give us an elevation on this wall. So the first thing I'm going to do, and again, just here, I'll probably just fit this as well. Okay, so back to the plan view or the 3D view, the first thing we're going to do is go transparent. And then what I'll do is I will enable the rebar menu and say crossing bar. Make sure that I load my standards in case I've set anything that I didn't want. And then I'll pick a bar. So at this point, what we're going to do is we've got to decide which bars are going to go in first and last. And it doesn't really matter that much because we can always flip the layer priority later. But let's say, for instance, we are going to go with a 20 millimeter bar, and I am going to pick a 5 glass, and I am going to say it's a 200 spacing, just like that. And then I'll hover over the section, which is the horizontal bar, and I'll just say okay. Now, first things first, let's deal with this bar first. The first thing that you can see is that on top we've got unfinished legs, and that is because there's no uh, faces there. So if we just go to our visibility and switch on our leg faces, we can then see this top face. There's no, there's no layer value on it, so there's actually no face there. So if we just hover over to the ribbon here and say add a leg face, and we hover over that bit, it adds a leg, and you can see that now completes the bar. The other thing we need to look at is just the spacing of the bars to make sure that they are all good. It looks like in this case it works all right. So what we're going to do is just, beg your pardon, break these bars up into into U bars. Because obviously at the moment what it's shown is like a ligature. So what we want like a U bar. So it's a U bar or a double L on this side, double L on that side, and a straight bar on either side. So what we can do is we can click on the bar, and I'll just switch off the leg visibility. Make sure it's selected, and then go over to the splitter command. Make sure that I load in case I've done any simple settings. And then when you hover over the bar, and I'll just rotate this slightly, I'll pick the front leg first. If you hover over the bar, Tekla gives you a measurement that it's going to apply to the leg. You can see that arrow with the 1050 there is just short of the concrete, so it means that measurement's on the leg. The other thing I just quickly want to show is if you hover around here and you get like really funny dimensions, what you could do is you could just hold in your shift key while you're hovering, and that will break it up into more manageable pieces. So we'll select the 1000, so it breaks the bar on that side. And on the other side, again, we can just pick our 1000. That breaks it. So we've got a U on this side. And now all we need to do is go to the opposite side and make sure that we also apply 1000 this side, and then rotate around and pop 1000 in this side. There we go. So now we've got 1000 either side. Those close off quite nicely. This closes off nicely, and that closes off nicely. So that pretty much deals with the horizontal bars. Now, in terms of the verticals bar, again, we'll go for a crossing bar. And this time I'm just going to select a bigger bar so it just stands out a bit more. So I'll go for a 24 bar, and I'll go for a 4 class, and I'll hover over the edge. Now, remember the rebar sets will create a bar perpendicular to the edge you select. So if I select that edge perpendicular, select that edge, it will be perpendicular to the taper. So in this case, we want the bottom. So if I select the bottom, and I don't want all four of the sides. I just want this side, the top, and the front side, and I can say OK, and that will create the bars on the inside for us, which is exactly what we want. And now what we can do is we can just break these bars up for U's on top and straights at the bottom. So if we go Control P, so we can see this better in elevation, you can see by default what's happened here is that it's already got a bit of a slope, a taper at the bottom. Now the reason for that, if you click on this and you go down to the taper stepping, you'll see there's no values in here. But if you hover over to the file menu button and over to settings and then on options, and we go over to the rebar sets tab and we click on general, this gives us the bar leg length configuration, but if we go to rounding and step tapering, you'll see that we've already got a 50 millimeter. So rounding up, taper bar, straight bar. So for straight bar, it will step at 50. For the first and the last leg, it will have a 50, and for the intermediate legs at 50. So it's applying that 50 at the moment on the first and the last leg. So what we can do is just to show you the effect. If we click on that bar and we go to the taper type and say there's none, modify, you will see it will be just bar straight through. Now, the effect of that, if we click on the wall, right click, inquire cast unit, the effect of that is that we do generate a lot of variable bars, which is maybe in this case not desirable. It could be desirable depending on your case, but say for instance in this case it's not desirable. What we can do as a first thing is I'm going to just move this guideline, this spacing guideline down a little bit, and click on the bar again, and then I'm going to say give me a splitter, and I'm going to make sure that the splitter is in the middle, everything is, and I'm just going to hover sort of in the middle of the wall to create a lap there. Now what's happened is, and what I'll do in this case is, that's a very, very long lap. Let me just look at, it's 1,000 millimeter lap. Oh, I beg your pardon, it's created the lap on the back side, so we still need to do that for the front side. So if we click on the bar again, we go splitter, and we also split the front side. There we go, that's better. Now what we end up with, and I'll isolate these bars and the concrete for a minute, and say Shift Show Only Selected. If we look at that, Control P to show it in elevation, we now have straight bars in the front and the back of this wall, which are all the same length. But again, we have tapering U bars that goes over the top. Now again, if we take the cast unit and we say inquire cast unit, it's still got a few tapering bars. There's less bars now, but there's still a few tapering bars. So what we can do now is we can introduce a property modifier on the top bar. So if I click on the bars and I go property modifier, and I just hover over the bars like so, what's happened now is if I click on the property modifier, we've actually introduced, let me just change that back to standard and say modify. If you introduce a property modifier just as is, what you will see is nothing has changed because we didn't actually change anything on the property modifier. But if I click the property modifier and I hover down to the area where it says step tapering, I can say I want to introduce a either a distance or a number. So let's try the distance first. We can say I want to step taper a distance, and what I want to affect is, if you look at these bars, this is a U bar. So the back leg might be the first leg, the top might be an intermediate, and the front might be the last leg. So we definitely want the first and the last leg to be affected. So what we can do, click on the modifier again, we want to change the distance, and the distance must be applied to the first and the last leg, and let's just key in a value of 100 millimeters there. And if I then say OK, you can see what's happened now is it's tried to keep that range, the U bars. So you can see they taper up to that point, then they step, and they taper up to this point and they step. So what's happened is it's keeping that group. So I wonder if we can do color groups, and we can just again select that and the wall and go show only selected. If we look at the groups, the green bars and the purple bars and so forth, they're all actually exactly the same bar, and the difference in length is taken up in the lap. So if we now go to our inquire cast unit, we can see that the amount of bars have been reduced significantly, and there's more of the same type, which is more desirable for economical and optimized scheduling. Um, so that is the way that I would deal with tapered walls. And I think, I mean, there are other options. So if you click on the property modifier again, you could also opt to go, say, instead of having a distance, I want to bunch number of bars together, and the number of bars that I want to bunch together, say for instance, is 6 bars on the group. Now, if you do that, and we go Control P again, we can now see every group will have 6 bars. So if we start on this side, let's isolate those quickly. If we start on this side, you can see the colors, there's 6 in that, and I'll put off my highlighter. There's 6 there, there's 6 there, 6 there, 6 there, and that's whatever, that's 6 as well, but it could be whatever the remainder is. But that's the way that you can sort of optimize your reinforcement and get less number of bars. So what we can do now is we can close this, and then we can right click show entire model, and this time we'll deal with the curved wall. So what I will do is I will open, actually we don't need to open a view on it, we can just work in 3D. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, right click and say fit work area, all views, so we only see that. And then what I'm going to do with this is I am going to say I need a crossing bar, and the crossing bar is going to be a 20 millimeter bar. So we'll just go back to the 20 mains. I'm doing the horizontals first, and then the color we keep it the same as the others, 5. And then for distribution by target, let's leave it 200. Let's leave everything the same. And now if I hover over the section like so, I can say okay, and that will give us now a curved bar all around the wall that looks like a ligature. So now what we can do is we can smartly break this up. So the way I would approach this is if I click on the bar and I go to a splitter, if we look at this wall, we see light gray lines in that position there where I'm hovering now. That means that part of the wall is straight. Then we have a curve up to this point, and then they're straight again. So the sensible place to break this up in a U would be on that edge, because that will allow us not to have any non-standard bars. It will be like a proper L bar. If I also, what's important is to have your lap on the correct line. So if I click there, I'm assuming that the direction of this split line is going to be from bottom to top, and so therefore I want the lap to be on the left hand side. So if I flick this over to left hand side and I hover over that, just make sure that I get there we go, get the split. And if I click, you can see what's happened here is we've now generated a lap that is left of that straight line, and this bar will be 100% straight leg there, where this one will curve into a lap. So that will be the only non-standard bar then, or it could be a standard bar in your catalog. So I'll just repeat that process here, and I'll say add a splitter. Again, I'll just pick that line, and it adds a splitter there. And while I'm at it, I might as well just go and do the other end as well. I'll pick that straight edge of the concrete there, and also the straight edge of the concrete here. So now we can see there's a problem with the laps on the wrong side. So you've got two choices here. If you want to keep your direction of your thing the same, all you have to do is you can click on this and then flip your side. Or otherwise, if you don't really care about the direction, you can click on the direction, and just down here, you can just swap the ends, and it will automatically, because the arrow has now changed direction, it puts it on the opposite side. So that pretty much gives us a wall now. And if we look at that, we should have these U's and those U's should be exactly the same. So that's one line in the bending schedule. And then these two curved bars should be different. So we should have 3 lines in the bending schedule. So let's just check this, inquire cast unit. So if we scroll down, we have 3 lines. We have our L's, which are the same on both sides. And then we have our non-standard curved bars, which is not part of our standard catalog. So with that in mind, what we can do now is also, if we just look at this, it's getting pretty close to the top there. So what I would probably do in this case is I would click on the bars and just see what the spacing is. So there's 16 bars and there's 15 spaces at 193. So that's a bit ordinary for the drawing. So what I will do in this case, I'd probably go 100 millimeters from the bottom to give them opportunity to fit in a kicker or whatever there. And then for this, I'll go a 0. And then for the spacing, what I would probably do is go exact spacings. Now, I already know I need, um, you know, 16, but it's getting pretty close to the top. So it's probably going to end up being 15 bars. So it will be 14 spaces. So 14 at 200. And if I then say enter, that gives us a much better configuration. So it's a bit away from the top and it's away from the kicker at the bottom. And we know that all these are exactly 200. So if we click on this bar, we click on the spacing line and we go modify spacings, we can see there we've got 100 at the bottom. We've got basically 0, but it is giving us a minimum of 100. That's why the green is. And then 14 bars at 200, which is nice for drawing. So, okay, so that deals with the horizontal bars, which is the easier part. So in terms of the vertical bars, the way I would approach it, again, I'll go for the crossing bar. And then you can go for the longitudinal bar, but you're going to get 1 bar as a set down here, and it's going to be very hard to manipulate that. So if you go for a crossing bar, what you could do is you could hover over a straight edge here and say, okay. And then again, we're only interested in that, the top and the front face. We're not interested in the bottom face. And again, let's just look at our uh, details here. We want a 24 bar. I'm going to change the color to a blue color. And then I'll just wipe these values out, and I would say by target spacing of 200, and that's all good. And I'll say okay, accept that. Now what Tekla is doing is it's giving you these funny bars. You know, it sort of starts perpendicular and then it keeps perpendicular. So what we can do to fix that up is if we click on this bar now, you can see where the spacing line is. We can drag and just make sure Tekla will try and put this in the middle. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get this line onto an edge. So if we grab this line and we pull it down to the bottom edge here, and then go Control P to get it in the top, and then if we drag this node, or handle rather, to the other end, you're getting the bars perpendicular to this handle. But now if we click on that line, and we look at the contextual toolbar, there's a facility that says follow edges. And if we click that, Tekla automatically follows the edges and all these bars are 100% perpendicular. Now, because we have the spacing line on the outside, Tekla is going to apply the 200 on the outside, which means the spacing on these bars on the inside is going to be slightly smaller, which is ideal. You know, if the engineer specifies a 200 spacing, it's normally a nominal, not a maximum. So with that, what we can do now is also we can split these bars, you know, to have, at the moment we've got a big U, but maybe we want two straight bars with a smaller U on top. So what we can do is if we click on that bar, we can then go to our splitter. And this time, what we're going to do is I'm going to just load the standard so it's in the middle. I'm going to hover over this edge of the concrete on top because we do want a splitter on top. So what I'm going to do is, oops, let me just, there we go, splitter on top. So you can see that splitter is fairly short there. It's not a problem. So the first thing we're going to do there is we're going to pick that splitter, and I just want to change the direction of the splitter. So on this little, we can change the arrow. And then what we want to do is we want to change the splitting dimension to split on the right. So we'll go down to middle and say, I want to split you on the right, modify. That changes the split to the right. And also I want to offset it by about 100 millimeters. So just to push that joint a little bit down from that radius so you can see what's happened there. Now, the magic is, if we now take this handle and we drag it all the way to the corner on the other opposite end, and we tell this splitter, we click on it and say, follow the edge, it magically follows the edge and you have perfect lap all around the outside. Now what we can do is just repeat this on the outside bar. So if we click on the bar, give me a splitter, we hover over this concrete edge again to make sure it's on the edge, and let's just see where it's split it, if we need to change orientation or anything like that. So we do, because it's splitting on the other side. So again, you can click on it and either change the direction here, or you can flip the switch. Let's flip the switch this time this side, modify. You can see where it's now flipped it that side. Let me just switch it off so you can see what's happened there now. And now all we need to do is if we click on this bar, click on the splitter, we can take again this node or handle and take it over to the opposite end. And then if we click on this edge, we can say follow the edge, and it will follow the edge. Now remember, if you don't get a follow the edge, or you don't get a bar that reacts to follow the edge, it means your modifier, if I click on here, your modifier, wrong bar, let me click on this bar, this modifier has to be on an edge to follow an edge. I mean, if this one is down here or in the middle of the wall, it cannot follow an edge. It's on a face. So it has to be on an edge. And if you do that, you can see Tekla is pretty smart. So in this way, we've got a perfectly detailed round wall with a lot of smarts. We can change stuff. But the beauty of this now is if we look at this, and just want to make sure that yep, it's right. Leg visibility. So if we look at this now, we should have one bar that is or one line in our bending schedule that represents the front and the back of the verticals, and a U on top. So that's 2 lines. And then for the horizontals, we've got one line for these, which makes up 3 lines, and then another 2 for that. So in general, we should have 5 lines in our bending schedule, and that's it. So if we go inquire cast unit and we look at our bending schedule, we end up with 5 lines. So that is the way that you would approach manual detailing of curves reinforcement walls in rebar sets. It's extremely easy. It's extremely powerful. It's easy to change, and it's you don't always have a component to save you in a case like this. Sometimes you get a tricky concrete geometry that you need to address with manual modeling, and this is the way you would do it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.